to the latest episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. My name is Josh. Today's episode 7, and we're going over the latest Bad Bunny album, Las que no iban a salir. For those of you who are joining me today, uh, thank you for stopping by. The last episode was over the latest Haley Williams album, Petals for Armor. If you want to check that one out, go ahead and listen to that podcast as well. And if this is your first time joining me, welcome. This episode, like I said, is going to be over the latest Bad Bunny album, which, for those of you who might not know or might not be familiar with Bad Bunny is a Latin hip hop, trap, reggaeton artist from Puerto Rico who broke through in 2016. Now, I feel like it's important to mention Bad Bunny had his start on SoundCloud and was noticed by a Latin DJ that signed him to his label, and just by putting his music on SoundCloud, which is quite a modern phenomenon among many artists today. You hear about SoundCloud rappers on the mainly in the American side of things, but it shows that the idea is quite cosmopolitan when an artist from Puerto Rico can become as big as Bad Bunny has gotten today just by getting their start on SoundCloud. Now, I was exposed to Bad Bunny through a coworker in 2018 with the song Te Bote that featured Ozuna and Nicky Jam, who Ozuna and Nicky Jam are um, juggernauts in the reggaeton genre or the Latin trap genre that it's now evolved to. Um, what made Bad Bunny stand out between those two artists probably would be like his deep vocal tone and his delivery that makes him uh, just distinct in the genre overall. Uh, Reggaeton has been around since probably the late 90s or early 2000s, or the reggaeton that we know today, the repetitive, triplet beat that's featured in pretty much all the music, with artists like Daddy Yankee, Weezy and Yandel being mainly the biggest artists of that time. The genre has developed more into a R&B, trap, hip hop style nowadays that combines the elements of the old reggaeton. And Bad Bunny um, is an artist that definitely has had his career take off because of those elements being fused into the genre today. I'd also note that Latin or just Spanish music in general, especially on the American side of the radio, has changed significantly. Before there was to be more of a soft rock kind of pop mainstream appeal to the music that was being put out, and reggaeton was kind of like an alternative genre. Nowadays, it's all reggaeton; it all dominates. So yeah, I know no one asked for that explanation, but I feel like it was important to put that out there when talking about Bad Bunny. Now, Bad Bunny also had a record release earlier this year that was critically acclaimed and praised by publications and music reviewers online as well. The album, I believe, was titled, it's a little bit weird of a title, YHLQMDLG. I'm sure that stands for something. Um, I I have listened to the album. Now, this review is not over that album, but I feel it's important to mention that that album is quite recent and it did drop earlier this year. Um, upon just trying to find music to review, I saw Bad Bunny released another album this year, and I felt like, why not give it a shot? Now, this new album, Las que no iban a salir, is quite shorter than the previous project release, and I believe this is honestly just cuts that might have not made that other album that was released earlier this year. To compare the two, Las que no iban a salir is only 30 minutes long, and YHLQMDLG is an hour and 5 minutes long. So um, immediately upon looking at Las que no iban a salir, this album I believe is filled with just cuts featuring, if it's not Bad Bunny, it's featuring an artist. And the artists are obviously put there in a specific, for a specific reason. All of the artists featured on here are all Puerto Rican, and they're all reggaeton artists that are prominent in the genre. Even ones that are integral to the probably origins of it, like Yandel, and then another group called Xeon and Linux, who first single goes back all the way to 2003. Don Omar's on there, Nicky Jam's on here. So what was I expecting going into this album? To be honest, I didn't really give too much attention to YHLQMDLG. I have listened to it, but to me, it did sound exactly what I expect a Bad Bunny album to sound like. There are highlights on here, and I do understand. I do get the praise. It is it is a good album. Uh, However, I feel like I might be a little bit more impressed by this cut, mainly because I was just surprised about what I found on this album. This album is really just maybe some genre bending stuff that I just was not expecting. Especially for an album that is really just to be is really just meant to be spared parts. But I'm not surprised that he released it as an album because it overall as a project is quite good. Starting with the song Si Ella Sale, there's just a typical trap beat on here. It's a hard hitting beat. That bass is very deep, very very hard hitting. He has an aggressive tone and flow on this thing. Um, it has some sampled bits here and there, but the album really doesn't start to impress me until the third track, where By Me Fui is featured. Um, Now, this song has really good production. It has this weird, nice, dreamy and dark atmosphere to it. Um, and it does have a typical reggaeton beat on it, but the production is quite good. There's some nice sparkly embellishments in there. Um, and This dark, dreamy atmosphere happens throughout the whole entire thing, especially on a later track called Ronce Freestyle. I mean, continue to be impressed by this album. Immediately on the next song, Con Canción con Yandel, which features the artist Yandel from the duo Wisin Yandel. This track has, again, a spacey atmosphere, a great hook that Yandel sings, um, some interesting high falsetto auto tuned that I don't hear very often. I think it's just a sad song about a girl, but I don't know really if it's corny or not, but you can really hear the emotion that Bad Bunny puts into this track. Uh, it was something I wasn't expecting. Now the next track, Pa Romperla, con Don Omar, that's a like an obvious club banger. There's some really deep bass on this with the reggaeton beat, but he fits really well into the track with Bad Bunny. Don Omar does, and that's one thing that I feel like this album has going for it is that all the features, the chemistry is there. It, it's really cool how malleable Bad Bunny is and how easy he can fit with other artists and just have a track come out of it that just feels so natural. And on the track Pa Romperla, there's even a good little eerie synth sounding beat that hits really hard. There's a good hook to it, and that's another thing on this thing. There's an eeriness to it, a darkness, and I wasn't expecting it from an album like this, where a lot of it's just kind of a lot of this genre could be a little generic sounding. A lot of it can just sound easily about things that are meant to be played at the club. But I feel like the genre bending here is basically done in a track like this, where Bad Bunny can put these experimental dark elements into a track, and it could easily fit in a club setting as well. I feel. Um, the album continues to go down this like trippy, dreamy uh, atmosphere with tracks like Bendiciones. This one's more of a trap song. There's a simple chord progression to it that sounds kind of like a xylophone in instrumentation. Um, but it develops later into a nice guitar like instrumental interlude that's sampled, and then it turns into kind of like this lush, dreamy idea that releases the tension from the prior uh, rap and trap that the song had earlier, and then it blends in immediately into the next song, "Como se siente," featuring this guy named Jake Cortez. Um, and it blends so well, and there's a nice sensitivity that goes into this track where it's even more dreamy. You can hear the bass being put, you know, just in the right areas to keep the color of the track going, and the beat does this cool thing where it fades out in some areas. There's some faint little vocal melodies in the mix as well. I feel like it was one of the better tracks on this album. And yeah, after that, the album's pretty much almost done. There's two more songs. One is called Bronca Freestyle. It blends in from the previous track as well, Como se siente. And it's just a nasty rapped type of trap song where I feel like Bad Bunny kind of just flexes his muscles with um, I guess, chops. And Um, the probably one of the lower points is the ending song on this, which doesn't really take too much away from the album. It's just a nice little song I think he did with his girlfriend, where they do a duet together kind of thing. It just ends like that. And I feel like this album caught me by surprise. I feel like what it had going for it was just concise. It got to the point. It had it had a theme, I believe. Um, the features were good, and it just left me it left me happy that I listened to this. I give it probably about a 7 out of 10. Um, Maybe if it was an actual album that was more thought out, I would rate it higher. But for being what it is, it took me by surprise, and I'm happy I listened to it. So yeah, we'll see what happens with any more future releases from Bad Bunny. Um, if he continues to go down this path of just experimenting, um, really concentrating on the production, on the music, I feel like his best work is yet to come. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. And thanks for listening to this episode of the Music Reviewer Podcast. You guys have a good day.